things doing well in the kingdom. Our people are looking well, doing well. But there is one area to which we need to really concentrate on this morning. I want to reiterate that again, which we need to cross over. And that is in a spiritual way. We need to be able to move from where we are to where God actually leads us. There's sometimes in our lives that we are very comfortable where we are and we think that's all there is to it. But we find out later on that there were some things that were missing that we were supposed to add to move things along. And because of that, things started to get stagnant. But out of Joshua 1, verse 1, now after the death of Moses, my servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spake unto Joshua the son of Nun, Moses' minister, saying, Moses my servant is dead. Now therefore arise and go over this Jordan, thou and all this people, unto the land which I do give to them, even to the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you. And I said unto Moses, and as I said unto Moses, you may have your seat. If you really think about the fact of what God is saying, he is saying, Joshua, you are now my leader. He said, I will be with you the same as I was with Moses. And everyone understood how he was with Moses. He showed his power through Moses, bringing the children of Israel out of Egypt. But I think some things that we overlook and we don't really see. Joshua was not chosen just because he was the next oldest person in the camp. Joshua was not chosen just because everybody liked him. Joshua was not chosen by God just because he was he. Joshua, as he said, was a minister of Moses. In other words, he was there in helping Moses. He was there in helping God do the things that had to be done. The hard things, the behind-the-scene things. The things that nobody really sees you up front doing. When Joshua took over leadership, the first thing God told him was, be of good courage. Be courageous. Don't be afraid. The thing that everyone can understand is when you're put in a leadership position, you don't always understand what goes with that until you start. And he was trying to give Joshua a heads up. There's going to be times when things are not going to look that good. There's going to be times when fear comes upon you. There will be times when you think you're doing the wrong thing, but you're doing what I asked you to do. In a leadership position, which was told, because it's very funny that you mentioned that this morning, about the mission and the vision. I think of that often. And the way that it was worded, the way that it was put together, it had to be a godly message coming through whoever wrote it. Because the words are so predominantly and put together so nicely that it covers everything that you could possibly need to cover. In our vision, it says to victoriously apply love, order, and responsibility back to a lost and hurting world. It says to victoriously do that. Not that we should go cowering down to somebody, begging or pleading somebody to be saved. But to show God's power through ourselves. That we can have power that we don't even understand projected out from us. The vision says, or the mission says that we should be producing leaders. If you think about what God is telling Joshua, I have produced you through Moses as a leader. But the one thing that goes back to my mind is at the end of Joshua, at the end of his days, the words would not think that he was doing what God had asked him to do. It says, and when Joshua died, and all the elders that were there with him died, children went back to sinning. It was like we all knew what God wanted us to do. We're here. We already know that God needs us to do this, this, and this. But we are not projecting that to the next generation. The next generation is being brought up with what they see us do, what they hear us do, but not what we're practicing for them to do. When they crossed over the Jordan, there was 2.5 groups of the tribes of Israel who decided they wanted to stay on the other side. They felt that it was comfortable for them to be on that side of the Jordan instead of going to the place that God had promised them. Their reasoning was, we have plenty of grasses here for cattle. We are cattle. That's not to say they couldn't have gone over to the other side and still found the same thing. Today, in our times, when we talk to people about bringing them from the darkness into the light, don't get discouraged because they choose to stay in the darkness, because that's where they're comfortable. That's where they're used to. We can tell them everything in the world and show them everything in the world that God had promised and that God wants us to do and was taking us into a blessed place. A place that flows with milk and honey in the spiritual aspects, that our lives will be taken care of by Him. But yet and still, they can't see that. They only see what's there in front of them. God does much work behind the scenes in the life of His children. But we don't recognize it until our relationships become strong enough that we hear from Him. Many things are happening to the life of a Christian that you would not expect to happen. But if you look at the background, if you were to see the big picture, you would see that there's something else down the road God is preparing us for. And without going through this, you will not be prepared for that. If the children of Israel had not spent those 40 years in the desert, struggling, waiting for God to feed them, knowing how to trust Him, understanding that it was their fault, but God is still taking care of them, when they got to the other side of the promised land, they probably would have very easily just picked up and said, well, God, if you ain't going to kill them, we ain't going to do nothing. We're just going to sit here. Can you imagine someone trying to tell me that if I walk around this building 7 times, it's going to fall? And I believe it. It's the same thing in most of our lives when God tells us to be strong and be of good courage. I will not forsake thee. But yet and still, fear comes upon us. And we do just the opposite of what God tells us to do. When strife hits the life of a Christian, how should he or she deal with it? You see, that's what God wants us to show the world. That we still trust Him, regardless of what we go through. Regardless of how life treats us, we still trust in Him. Everything that's done is done for a reason. When the children of Israel crossed over into the Jordan, they knew that it was a good land. The spies had told them that. But what they didn't know is that they were going to have a struggle in capturing the land. Even though God says, I am with thee, I will not forsake thee, I will go before thee, they still saw with their eyes the journey ahead. I want you to open your spiritual eyes this morning and see what God is showing you. See the journey that He's promised you. See the outcome. See the promise. No matter what you're going through today, I want you to see into the future in the spiritual, where God is showing you, I have provided for you, given you everything that you need. We sometimes take for granted in the wrong way that because things aren't going my way and God's not hearing my prayer. I want you to know today, God heard your prayer before you said it. He knew your circumstances before you realized it. God understands everything that you're going through, but yet still He is not going to stop because you don't like it. We have to realize things are going to go through our lives every day as long as we're living. The problem is, how do we go through it? Do we let circumstances dictate how our lives are going to be shaped? Or do we follow the word that God has given us? When they brought the ark to the water and stepped in the water, and the waters receded and went back, and they were walking across on dry land, can you imagine the thoughts that's going through the person's mind that's watching this? We are walking on dry land like you walk on a beach, and the water was just there, and all of a sudden it just opens up as we go across. We go across fearlessly, because we know it's God's hands upon it. We go in there understanding that this is what God had for us all the time. How many times have we waited for something and waited for something and waited for something, and then it finally arrives and the joy comes over? It's like a person looking for a house, or a person looking for a house, and they see the very one they want. And it seems out of reach. The price is up here, and they got all this, and the taxes and all that. And then you're trying so hard, so desperately to get what you want. And you pray, and you ask God, can I have it? Can I have it? And you don't hear an answer. But your struggle goes on. You don't give up. You still go through the process. And in the end, you see what God had for you. And He reveals, this is yours. The Bible says when God gives you something, He gives it to you without remorse. So as long as you have it, there should be no remorse in something God has given you. We sometimes take for granted that because I can afford something, I should have it and I take it. Now I have remorse. That's not what God gave us. We sometimes have to understand. There's things in life that you want, but you don't need. There's people in your life that you like, but you don't need. There's jobs in our life that we like, but we don't need. Can we sometimes ask ourselves, what is it that God has for us? Not so much the things that I want. When God takes something away from you, are you angry with Him? Or do you just ask Him, God, what's next? We have a spiritual change that has to come over each and every one of us. And that change was called conversion. It means our minds must get off the old and become a part of the new. We can't step into clean water with muddy feet and expect the water to stay clean. He says to wash your feet before you walk in the cleanliness. He told Moses, take off your shoes. In other words, don't put anything between me and you. Not even a quarter-inch sole on your shoe. Nothing do I want between you and I want you to think very hard this morning. Is there anything between you and God this morning? Is there anything that comes before God that you can say, I have to do this first? If He said, stop, move today, go across the street, I want you to go talk to some people for me. I want you to bring them up out of darkness. Can you say, I can do that? Or do you say first, let me get my house in order. Let me get this together. Let me get that together. Or would we be like Moses? God, I don't have the words to say. I don't know how to do that. If you know God, you understand God puts the words in your mind for you to say. And as long as we do what he says, he's responsible. Is there anything in your life today that you would not give up for God? You just think very carefully. Very carefully. Abraham had the same choice. God said, give your son to me. Are we willing to look at that in our own lives and say, God, whatever you ask of me, I will give to you, just so our relationship stays strong? Are we willing to do that? Or do we say, God, pick something else, I can't do that. I'm not ready, I'm not that strong yet. And then the question comes, what does it take for you to get that strength? You see, for change to happen, you have to have a desire to want to change. For your mind to be changed from where it used to be to where it is today and to where God needs it. See, we're constantly in change. When you go from one place to another, you are constantly going to be in change. Turmoil is constantly going to turn you around. If you look at the ocean is constantly moving. The waves come up. And while it does it, it's changing the landscape of the beach. The sand is moving. Water comes back. Water comes in. The sand is moving. Our life is the same way as you allow God to change you. We are constantly moving. We are constantly moving forward. God needs us to be strong, especially in today's time. We have too many Christians today that sit on the border, not knowing which way to go. They don't understand what God's expecting of them. They don't want to try. Their relationship is built on the one time they came up and said, Lord, come into my heart. And that's all they have. They can know. There is no more witness inside of them than that. The people of God should have a witness for every day of their life. God's constantly doing something in your life. Whether you pay attention to it or not, God is constantly watching over you. His angels are encamped around you. The spiritual life that you have hinders on one thing. Do you believe that God is God and that there's nothing he can't do? I'm sure when the ark was brought in front of the children of Israel, they saw the power of God coming before you. When you read the Word of God and it soaks into your spirit, can you feel the power of God coming upon you? That just trusting in His Word, understanding that God makes no promise He does not keep. And how many times does He have to say, fear not? How many times does He have to keep telling you the same thing? Fear not, fear not, fear not. And then the next morning He gets up and the first thing He has to tell you is, fear not. When do we learn? It's all in His hands. It's not about us. It's about Him. When you have a desire to change, now you need to practice the change. When you learn something, you have to practice that. The problem children have today in school is math. Math is a big issue in school. Because you can't just write the answers down and throw the paper in and say, I know it. It's something you have to practice. The more you get into it, the more formulas there are for you to remember. The more things you have to do, the more steps that comes into it. And because of that, you need to study. You need to practice. When we talk about prayer, are you practicing in prayer? Or are you going through the motions of prayer? While you're jogging on the road, are you saying, oh God, take care of me because I know these animals is out here? Well, that's one way of prayer. But how about when before you go on your run, you sit down in a quiet time and say, God, it's just you. I need this time with you so that a relationship can be built upon something strong. As a people of God, we show very little trust in you to the world by the way we act. When things go bad and I act just like my neighbor who's not even saved, what am I showing him? But when I stand up that say God is God no matter what happens. God is still God. The reason I love the three Hebrew boys, he said, because God will protect you, and even if he doesn't. Those words, even if he doesn't, I will still trust in him. Let me tell you something. The three Hebrew boys understood. If God saves me from the fire, I'm still in the palm of his hand. But if he doesn't, and he takes me out because of the fire, I am still in the palm of his hand. Can you understand that? Can you see that in your own life? That no matter what happens, you are still in God's hand. Things come and things go. But God remains the same. We have to realize that God needs a people who are his people. Not the world's people. His people. A leader that's willing to stand up for him. Who's not looking for what he gets out of it, but what he gives into it. Did you know that discipline, which is a word most of us hate, requires a lot of work? When a person goes on a diet and they see the list of things that they can eat and the list of things they can't eat, you have to have a desire to follow this list. Otherwise, you're going to stay over here in this list looking at that list. And then you're going to wonder why I'm not losing. But when we follow the directions that God sets before us, it's not my position to say, hey, it didn't work. Because God already knows when it works and when it doesn't work. It doesn't work in my way. But it's working in God's way because he already knew the plan. How many times have we said we're going to do something and change our mind because it begins to look too difficult? We ain't even started yet, but that looks difficult. I watched some people run a marathon. I told them I couldn't walk a marathon. Mm-hmm. But to them, they saw the finish line before they even started. They were determined they were going to cross the finish line. That type of determination needs to be in every Christian. That when we start this walk, we are not going to deviate from it. We are going to stay on this path until we reach the finish line. You hear about people in this race, they take off and go to shortcuts and they end up at the first in line somewhere. They haven't accomplished anything. They know they cheated. But there's the limelight. Is everybody looking at them? Oh, look how good I am. Look at where I am. It's not a matter of fact that you see, when it comes to God, there is no cheating. What it's done in the dark comes to the light. You can't get away from it. God saw you. He already knew you was going to try to cheat. He already knew you was going to do something that was illegal that you wasn't supposed to be doing. But God said, that's okay. It'll come to light. And generally it does. They got some camera somewhere that saw you take off and cut across here, cut across there, and do something. I want how many of you actually, in your own mind, totally trust God? I mean, totally trust God. Not 99%. 100% you trust God. That whatever you know he told you to do, you can do and be confident that it's all in his hands. I watch these guys drive these cars on fire, through up in the air, over these buses and all that stuff. Listen, there's no way I'm doing that. But in their mind, they are confident they are not going to get hurt. Even Knievel broke every bone in his body and still got on the bike and did it again. In his mind, one accident doesn't stop me from going forward. I got to go over this hurdle because it's there. I said I was going to do it, and regardless of the outcome, I'm going to do it. Can we say that as Christians? God, no matter what happens in my life, I'm going to follow your word. I'm going to stay on your path. I'm going to keep my mind focused upon you. in your own mind, where is your walk at today? Are you walking the path that God gave you and you know you're on that path? Or have you deviated away from it and you're trying to figure out, how do I get back? Let me tell you a secret. The way to get back is to go back. It's not 12 steps. You get on your knees before God. You say, God, I'm sorry. I've walked outside your path again. I know that the things that you wanted me to do, I have not done. But because of your word, you said you are faithful and just to forgive me of these things and to cleanse me from all of that unrighteousness. And then you would take me back and allow me to be again under your blessings. If you can only believe that much, you are already here again. Because God says, trust me. Proverbs, trust the Lord with all thy heart and lean not on your understanding. He said, but in all your ways you acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. You see, it started out with trusting him. And lean not on your own understanding. Because you don't understand the path that he set before you doesn't mean that that's not the path he put in front of you. Many of us have to stop saying, well, that can't be God. Satan, get from behind me. Too much work out here for that. God would make me do all that. Did you sit down and ask him? Did you say, God, is this the path you have for me? Or are you one of those people that say, God doesn't talk to me? If God doesn't talk to you because you're not listening, God is speaking all the time. If you cut off the radio, turn off the TV, put down the books, go off into a quiet place, close the door, sit down, and just say, God, I'm here. Speak to me. And don't you start asking God what you want. Just sit quiet. Let God speak. Sometimes you're not going to like what you hear. Because it's going to start with the things you need to change. We don't want to hear that. But let me tell you, that's the best way to start and change. It's just that. Allow God to clean out the attic. Clean out the basement. Have a rummage sale. Spiritually, and get rid of all the unnecessary things we cloud ourselves up with. We have to stop remembering what Grandma said. Because see, Grandma may not have been right. We didn't go check. We just said, okay. So we live within that word that somebody else gave us. We need to go back and investigate. One of the famous words is God helps those that help themselves. That's not in the Bible. But most of us live by that. We think we got to do something before God's going to help us. If that was the case, you would have never been saved. You didn't save yourself. We weren't hunting for God. God reached out and grabbed us because he knew it was your time to come to him. We have to stop allowing what somebody else said to keep us going forward in God. If it's not in the book, don't worry about it. God will explain it to you. He'll give you everything you need. But remember, you can't cross the beach with your foot in the sand. You gotta get in the water and let go. Because before you do that, you'll still be watching everybody else swim to the other side while you're still standing there talking about, I'm doing it. However long it takes you to get there is how long you're missing out on God's promise and the things that he has for you. Stay tuned.